Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm looking at a very famous class of steam locomotive by Hornby. I have a theory then, right? I would say that Hornby's models from the early to mid 2000s, somewhere around there, were their best models. In terms of looks, at least, Hornby have never been able to better those. In fact, I would go further than that and say not only were these models a golden age for Hornby, but they were actually probably some of the best models ever created across the entire industry, including all of the other manufacturers. And a particularly dramatic recent example of this would be Bachmann's brand new Class 08 shunter. Fantastic looking model, of course, but next to Hornby's 20-year-old 08 shunter, it didn't hold up. I think Hornby's still looked better. Bachmann's certainly had a lot more fancy modern features, that kind of thing, but in terms of the looks, specifically the moulding, the Hornby still was better. And I can't overstate how crazy that is. You know, we're always talking about how much better models are getting, how they're improving all the time. And yet we had a brand new 2025 £200 plus model on RRP that didn't look as good as a 20-year-old Hornby model. I think that is crazy, and obviously that's not because Bachmann's new model was bad, it's because of how good Hornby's Class 08 was. So today I've decided to look at another model from that era to see if that trend continues, and we are looking at this. It is Hornby's Royal Scot. And I want to revisit this because I think if Hornby aren't going to be investing in as many new 00 scale toolings, then what they could do instead is bring back some of the models from this era. The Royal Scot was introduced in 2007, so that's another one made by Sandokan, one of the best factories for model railway stuff of all time. Why don't Hornby bring back models like this with some quality of life upgrades, maybe with a few more modern features, but using the original toolings? Maybe that's something they could do. So the Royal Scot is a class that has been in Hornby's range on and off for a number of years. It's not available at the moment, but you can pick them up second hand. And again, I'm thinking hopefully if I can shine a spotlight on this thing, Hornby might bring this back if they see that there is demand for this model. So if you'd like to see an updated Royal Scot, show your support, email Hornby about it, tell them you'd like to see it. Maybe they'll bring this back if there is demand. But is this worth bringing back? Is this as good as Hornby's other models from this era? Today we are going to find out. So I bought mine in 2020, and back then the RRP was £170.99 and a typical price at the retailers was about £144. I forget where I got this one from, but as you can see on the box, this cost £97.99, which is way less than both of those prices. So I got a good price. They were quite expensive otherwise though. Anyway, is it worth Hornby bringing this model back anytime soon? Well, let's find out. Alright, so the Royal Scot, a very famous LMS design, which was notable because it was such a step up from the locomotives that had come before it. It was massive, it was super powerful, and it was much faster than the previous locomotives as well. And I think the LMS owed a lot to this design. A lot of their future designs after the Royal Scot borrowed a lot from this. I mean, I look at the Royal Scot, obviously you can see the Patriots, you can see the Jubilees, you can see the Black Fives. Yeah, this really would be what the LMS's future looked like. But anyway, let me show you the end of the box. So the product code I've got is R3558. This is in the late BR livery, so not an LMS livery, but it's the Royal Scot class, the Ranger. Yep, so it's got a name, 12th London Regiment, and it's running number 46165, and it is DCC ready. Also, if I show you the back of the box, you can see this was classified as a 7P, so passenger locomotive class 7, unbelievably powerful for the 1920s as well. Plus we've got a brief history of the class in the middle there, so pause and read that if you'd like to. And then we have Hornby's drawing for the Royal Scot in the middle here, dated 2007. So yeah, like I say, not far from 20 years old now. But If this is anything like the 08 and the other Sandokan models from this era, that isn't going to matter too much, but we'll see. Right, opening up, let's see what this thing looks like. It's been a very long time since I've looked at a Hornby Royal Scot, and there it is, shrouded in the packaging, of course. So let's not waste any time, let's get this thing out. So weight, yeah, don't feel too bad actually, fair bit of heft to that. And we have the instructions. So this is for the Royal Scot and the Patriot class, so presumably they share the same chassis. And this is just very, very basic instructions. So oiling points, that's the crank pins and the axles themselves. We have a very small number of accessories here, just some buffer beam details, that kind of thing. And of course, coupling for the front if you don't want to have the vacuum pipes. There's also cylinder drain cocks that you can fit, of course. Then removing the locomotive body, you've got to pull the bogie out and then it's a screw to release the body, that's fine. Assembly, disassembly, we've got the typical Hornby loco to tender drawbar connection, and the DCC socket, which is an 8-pin, is inside the tender where there's also room for a speaker. I think if Hornby were to bring this model back, these are the things that they could improve. Maybe they could have a pre-fitted speaker, maybe a more modern DCC socket, possibly a different drawbar as well. But yeah, anyway, this is slightly older. Brake rods as well, if you want to fit those, you can do to both the loco and the tender. So simple instructions. Let's see exactly what you get with this then. And yeah, there does seem to be a lot of accessories here. So we've got cylinder drain cocks as shown, painted nicely. Vacuum pipes in there as well. We've got the full brake rigging, coupling for the front, some steps. I don't know if those would foul the front bogie maybe then on tight curves, but if you've got broader curves or maybe you're just going to statically display the model, you could fit those and then the loco would be complete. But yeah, nice accessories. Okay, so one thing that might be true of this model is that the finish maybe isn't as great as we're used to seeing these days, which is another reason why it might be great for Hornby to bring this back, because a new version of this produced in 2025 could have Hornby's latest decoration techniques applied to it, which would make it look even better, especially if the moulding is still good. But anyway, there it is. Yeah, it's not actually a bad finish, you know. It's not too bad. It's not quite as luxurious looking as some of their most recent releases, and there's certainly no difference in finish between the boiler and the smoke box, for example. That is something that I think makes a model look much more realistic. That is when a smoke box has a slight matte finish to it. But no, it's not bad actually. There is a bit of a sheen to it, as much as, yeah, it's not quite what we're used to today. Anyway, let's lift this up. Yeah, it's not a bad weight to this. Yeah, not bad at all, actually. The loco, in particular, is quite weighty, although it is quite a plastic construction. So it is just a plastic running plate on this and a plastic boiler body, whatever. Yeah, it's all plastic. The chassis is obviously metal, and that's where the weight comes from. So kind of your typical setup for a loco from the mid-2000s. But yeah, look at the detail on this thing. We have so much going on. Tiny little detail parts. We've got the metal reverser rod. We'll look at all of this later on. But there is a lot that hits the eye, isn't there, when you first get this thing out? Yeah, it is quite impressive, to be fair. So we'll have a bit of background on the Royal Scots in real life, and then we'll take a much closer look at this model, and I'll show you exactly what it's got to offer. The Royal Scot was a class of 70 locomotives introduced to the LMS in 1927 to the design of Henry Fowler. Up until this point, the LMS, like the Midland Railway, had maintained a fleet of smaller engines such as the Midland Compounds or the Clawton class. By the late 1920s, though, Fowler decided that these were inadequate, and he proposed a brand new compound Pacific Express locomotive. Now, other departments in the company opposed this suggestion, and they made him borrow a 460 Great Western Castle class for testing purposes. And having proved itself, Fowler's Pacific was rejected, and the 460 Royal Scot class was born instead, with the intention of reusing some of the Castle class design. And in fact, it would take another 6 years before a Pacific design would be approved for the LMS. The class was introduced without testing, and so lots of modifications had to be made on the fly, but the class eventually became fairly successful. The class was able to haul larger express trains than previous locomotives, making them ideal for running the famous Royal Scot service, plus they were very fast for the time too, achieving dizzyingly high speeds for the era, even when hauling a heavy train. In 1943, all members of the class were rebuilt with new Type 2A boilers, the same as on the rebuilt Jubilee class. Withdrawal then took place over the early 1960s, with all but 2 examples being scrapped. Neither of the 2 remaining locos are in original condition though, both of those have been rebuilt. So there it is, up close and personal for you, Hornby's absolutely beautiful Royal Scot. And this is a really interesting model actually, we're going to dive right into this. The first thing to say is that I bought this in 2020, so while the design dates back to 2007, it's quite likely that this particular model was built closer to 2020 than the 2000s. And that might explain why the finish is a bit better than you might expect, because yeah, that's genuinely not too bad. It's definitely got a bit of a sheen to it. And it also might explain why the build quality is a little bit sloppy. The 2000s models had a reputation for being beautifully built. This is slightly less so, and as we're going to see later on, there are a few sloppy detail bits. But otherwise, it's a really, really impressive model. And this is the other interesting thing. 5 years ago, back in 2020, I thought the full price of £170.99 or the typical retailer price of £144 seemed insanely expensive. I was kind of riled up by how expensive it was. But today, you know, 170 quid RRP for something as detailed as this seems really, really good. It almost seems like it's in bargain territory because of how expensive models are these days, which is kind of a sad thing, isn't it? Of course, that's a bit of an illusion. I think if Hornby were to bring this back now, it would cost more than £170, but still crazy to think how much of a difference in perspective just 5 years can create. But anyway, let's have a look at this up close. I did mention a bit of a quality issue with this, and yeah, it's not the greatest quality model in the world. So like I say, the body is made of plastic. I think even at £170 RRP, a little bit of metal here, possibly in the running plate, like we see with the Bachmann LMS 460s, that would have made the model seem a lot better value for me. When you pay a lot of money for a model and you pick it up and you feel metal against your fingers, from a psychological point of view, I think that's very valuable. It does create a lot more perceived value. We've also got a good number of wonky parts. Is it a good number? Maybe it's a bad number, I don't know. But we've got the whistle, which is pointing upwards a little bit, as you can see. We've got visible glue on the front lamp bracket on the smoke box door, which is also not straight. And we've got this mechanical lubricator here, which is an amazing part, by the way. We've got all the little pipes coming out of there, separately painted, of course, but alas, it's not fitted straight. So you've got this beautifully created part, but it's not fitted straightly, so the illusion is broken a little bit. Again, we've got pipe work here that isn't connected to anything and kind of just bending down. Yeah, it's not the top assembly job that I would have expected. We've also got a fair bit of visible glue, mainly visible under the splashes, as you can see, and also at the bottom of the smoke deflectors here. It's a little bit on the messy side. Plus the fit of some of the components, maybe this dome here, for example, isn't great. You can clearly see where that sort of fits into a slot on the boiler. I think that is definitely by design. So yeah, I think we have seen slightly better by modern standards. But overall, the level of detail to say this was introduced in 2007 is absolutely amazing. Let's start by taking a look at the decoration, which is great. I mean, the banding on the boiler here is phenomenal. That's really well done. Because this is in a slightly later livery, we do have the danger warnings printed onto the loco body as well. Again, brilliantly printed, very good quality. Here we have the Ranger nameplate above the front splasher, and surprisingly this is a metal nameplate. It may be etched, but the lettering isn't etched into it, it is just printed on, so I don't really know why they do that. It looks fine, of course, but yeah, if the lettering had a little bit of relief to it, that would have looked even better, I reckon. We've also got the lining on the splashers, which looks really impressive as it sits behind a lot of the separate detail parts. Incredibly realistic, that. Then we've got the side of the cab, of course, which is beautifully lined, and it's also got the classification and the running number on it. The cylinders are lined as well, very precisely, and the running plate also has lining which follows its profile. Again, all very, very good. Here's a look at the smoke box door. We might as well cover the smoke box door while we're here. So we've got the running number and the shed code printed onto there. We've also got the wonky separately fitted lamp bracket. We've got a wire handrail fitted onto this as well. Yep, wire handrails on this model, more of those still to come, and a fully separately fitted smoke box door handle. Finally, on decoration, we have the plain red painted buffer beams. So yeah, it looks like a reasonably simple livery from a distance, but up close it's actually got some really lovely features. Right, let's jump in then and look at the level of detail, which, like I say, is very, very impressive. So, nicely produced wheels. Typical Hornby wheels in that they are just moulded in plastic, and then the plastic is pressed into a metal tyre. It looks absolutely fine. The coupling and connecting rods look pretty good on this as well, nice and fine. You'll notice what looks like a quartering issue, but it's not. It's just there's a lot of slop in this mechanism. You can see how much the rear wheel turns there. So it looks like they're out of quarter. They're not. There's just a bit too much slop. I can't remember whether that causes any performance issues though. I think probably not. And we've also got a speedo attached to the rear crank pin as well, which is a nice little touch. We've got loads of separately fitted pipework beneath the cab, which looks very good. Plus we've got the pipework fitted to even the bottom of the running plate, which again is really impressive and cool to see on a model that was designed so long ago. Along the running plate there is loads of detail, as you can see, so many separately fitted components. I've already mentioned the mechanical lubricator, but there's much more than that besides. Along the boiler we've got separately fitted pipework, which is very nice and straight, as are the handrails, which are wire. Again, we're starting to see a lot of plastic handrails these days. These ones are wire though, which looks great. And like I've already mentioned as well, we've got the metal reverser rod, which is great quality. Buffer beam wise, we've got turned metal buffers which are sprung. Look at that. I have fitted a front coupling to this locomotive, although that was my choice. You don't get that out of the box, so it wouldn't foul the screw link coupling like this normally right out of the box unless you two chose to fit one. But yeah, we actually have a movable pivoting screw link coupling pre-fitted to this model. Again, this is a feature that we only sometimes see today. Then up on top we've got the double chimney on this locomotive, which looks pretty good. Plus we've got separately fitted turned metal safety valves, which look great, not made of plastic, so much more convincing as a result of that. And we've even got a posable vent on the top of the cab here, which you can open and shut if you want to. That's really, really cool. Then we've got glazed windows on the cab, which looks very good, and even a fully painted cab interior. Now, does anybody have a Scot from 2007? Is the painting in this cab a new addition, or did it originally have all the details picked out like this? I don't know, but mine certainly does, and there's even paintwork on the gauges. That is very, very cool to see. Then we've got extra details such as the cab doors pre-fitted as well, and even a metal tender full plate, although that one doesn't reach the tender or anything close, really. Speaking of the tender, here it is, again a beautifully detailed tender. The finish and paintwork looks excellent. We've got beautiful lining on the tender, plus the late British Railways crest is a nice print as well. Although personally, if I was running the factory and things like this happened, my policy would be to throw those out rather than letting them go out to customers, because yeah, somebody messed that up, it's fine, that happens, but these are expensive models. Customers don't expect cock-ups like this in the paint jobs. The axle box detail, I mean, this is what I mean about the sander can detailing. The moulding here is just great. It still looks bang up to date. If a new model came out with moulding that looks like this, I would say that's great, it looks good. I wouldn't ever guess that that was getting on for 20 years old. Then we've got detail on the front of the tender, again nicely moulded in. The tender also has wire metal handrails, look at those, so they're nice and sturdy. And the coal load is very realistic, no complaints about that at all. Looks very good, and it's removable as well, so if you wanted to take it out and run it empty or add your own coal, that is something you can do. Here's more of the detail towards the back of the tender. The water filler has a separately fitted wire handrail on it as well. amazing attention to detail. And then around the back, we've got all these little steps, which I think are molded on, but they're so fine. That looks great. And these little plates on the back of the tender, they're not separately fitted, but unlike on a lot of new tooled models, these are printed onto a slightly raised section so that it looks like they are separate plates and not just painted onto the body. Again, modern locomotives don't do this as well. Yeah, this looks great. And then we've got a similarly detailed buffer beam with more riveting on it this time, and a rear tension lock coupling, which doesn't poke out too far from the back of the tender. So again, quite nice and realistic. So it's a really interesting locomotive. Hard to believe that the design of it dates back to 2007, and I still strongly believe that if this model came back, maybe with a few extra features on the chassis, maybe with an updated paint job, perhaps with a matte effect on the smoke box, this would look like a 2025 model and nobody would know that this dated back nearly 20 years. Yeah, I hope Hornby don't announce a new tooled Royal Scot, because this one really does the job, at least for me. What do you think? Please do let me know down in the comments. Next though, we need to take a look at the mechanism. I'll show you what this loco is like inside, and then we'll get it down onto the track and I'll show you how this runs. So there she is, the Hornby Royal Scot down onto the track, and I'll show you performance in just a second, but first we're going to talk about mechanism. And the mechanism is a bit of a mixed bag, actually. It's probably the only aspect of the model that I would say needs serious improvement before Hornby bring this thing back. It's got some great features, but it's also got some really annoying features, which we'll get into now. So first of all, I've not talked about the weight yet. This weighs in at 371 grams, loco and tender, which is actually pretty impressive considering the loco's body is just plastic. That is 10 grams more than Hornby's new Black 5, even though that loco had a die-cast running plate. So yeah, even though it has a plastic body, it's really not the weight that's a problem with that. Similarly, the number of pickups is fantastic. So all of the tender wheels have wiper pickups on them, and all of the loco driving wheels have wiper pickups on them as well, which means in total we've got 6 pickups per rail. That's absolutely loads. This thing is going to be reliable on the track, and I've had mine for years now. I can confirm that it definitely is. Here's a look at the drawbar. You won't be surprised to see this is Hornby's typical drawbar design. This is a later addition though. This is not as it would have been in 2007. In 2007 we would have had those wiper contacts connecting the loco and tender. This is a lot better than that, as much as it is less convenient to disconnect the loco and tender. The base keeper plate is held on with screws, and I thought this was going to be a great easy service when I first pulled it off, but then I realised the pickups are connected to another plate below the main base keeper, and the pickups are hardwired, and very tightly hardwired at that, to the point where I couldn't remove the base keeper. So this is not easy to service. You can do it, of course, but it might involve desoldering the pickup wires and pulling the base keeper off like that. Not convenient. So yeah, good luck when you want to clean the pickups or lubricate the bearings. Not a fun process. There are bearings though, you can just about see them there through the slot where the main driving gear goes. So it does have proper bearings, it's just not very easy to service them. And the loco is driven just by a single axle, as you can see, and remember there is quite a lot of slop in this mechanism as well. Perhaps not so much in the mechanism, but certainly in the rods. So that's something that ought to be tightened up really. The next thing then is body removal, and I have to say the instructions are poor here. So the instructions only mention removing the front bogie, removing the front screw, and then the body comes off. This is not true. Because of course there's this speedometer here, which on some models they've been cleverer with, where they've had both ends of the speedometer piece connected to the chassis. So where it looks like it connects to the body, it'll still be connected to the chassis. It's just got a little arm poking out of the chassis or something. That's not the case with this. It's connected to the wheel, obviously on one end, and then the body on the other end, which means you do have to remove it if you want to remove the body. The fact that the instructions failed to mention this is frankly dangerous to the model. Someone thinking, I followed the instructions, the body's not coming off. Why? I don't know, I'm just going to pull it. those people are going to damage this loco, and it wouldn't be their fault. If you've got instructions giving detail on how to do something, then people don't expect to have to figure it out themselves. Poor instructions. But anyway, I could remove the front bogie and the front screw and remove the body entirely. Now, I have to say this is a low-tech chassis. There's no electronic bells and whistles on here, it's literally just the motor. But that has allowed a lot of space for more metal on the chassis, and I think there's a lot to be said for that. Again, this is heavier than Hornby's new Black 5. It does have a 5-pole motor though, and it's the large version as well, which is great to see, and this motor serves this loco very well, although there is no flywheel fitted to it, which is a shame. Now you can see by these two screw threads here that the DCC socket used to be inside the locomotive, but it's not anymore, it's inside the tender, and it's quite interesting that they chose to move it. I was wondering why would they want to move the socket from the loco? Well, I guess there's more room in the tender, so when the age of sound came along, it made more sense to put the decoder in the tender where there would be room for a speaker. Plus, when they started using this standard drawbar with the 4-pin connector, I guess for standardization purposes, it made more sense to move the decoder into the tender as well, but I prefer decoders in tenders. Anyway, to access the interior of the tender, it's just one screw at the front of the tender, and then the body is free to come off. And again, there's very little inside here, not even a pre-fitted speaker, which is not a surprise given the age of this model, but again, I think if Hornby were to bring this back, especially at a high price, then a pre-fitted speaker would be nice to see. And then we've just got the 8-pin DCC socket, which is absolutely fine. Yep, so if you want to chip this, not too much trouble. And then the back-to-back gauging came in nice and consistently at 14.3mm back-to-back, which is just comfortably below the standard. Nothing wrong with that. So on the whole, it's a good mechanism. It's not very flashy, it's not got loads of tech on board, but personally, I don't mark models down for that. I love the tech, I think the more the better, no problem with that. But if a model is simpler and it just works properly and it's got a decent mechanism, I'm fine with that as well. I'm not so keen on the lack of flywheel and the poor serviceability of this thing though. It's a nightmare to service this, and honestly, I just don't bother accessing the axles and the pickups, which is fine for now because it's got so many pickups, but one day it is going to require me to take this thing apart entirely, and I'm not looking forward to that. But what I am looking forward to is the performance, because this thing is great. So let me show you this running. It's a speedy one. That's 50% speed. It's very, very quick. Yeah, it's a fast loco. And the weird thing is, when I reviewed this for the first time 5 years ago, or however long ago it was, even after running in, this thing struggled. It struggled to crawl. And I thought, you know, it's just geared to run too fast. It's not going to be a good crawler. And that was true during that review. But you know what? I've run this loco for many a year now, and I can't replicate that. This thing is perfect all the way down to a crawl, or at least it was a second ago when I tested it. Hopefully it won't embarrass me by reverting back to its old ways. But yeah, look how slow that is. And it's not even coggy. So yeah, this one really has seemed to benefit from a lot of running in beyond the hour that I usually give a loco. I mean, look how slow that is. Smooth acceleration. Delightfully. So it's an astonishing crawler. I didn't give this 5-star 5 years ago. I checked because I thought, hang on, I don't remember this loco being as good as this. But yeah, I can't fault it now. So yeah, if you're having trouble at the slow speed, just run it and see what happens. Torque, now obviously it's geared to run quite fast. Has that affected the torque? Nope. Look at that. So these motors are good, and it's obviously a good example in this loco as well, because that is marvelous. So yeah, really, really good. The tractive effort is great as well. Again, this seems to be higher than what it was when I measured it last time. So I've got 0.46 now. I think I got 0.39 last time. So I don't know, this loco might have just improved and blossomed over time. It might be that the sort of spring Newton meter that I use to measure pulling power is inaccurate. Probably a bit of both, to be honest, but I think for next year's reviews, I am going to invest in a digital meter. so that I get a bit more accuracy in my results. But anyway, it's decently powerful. That should be about 28 coaches on straight and level track, which is more than Hornby's new Black 5, and it's about the same as Hornby's newest 9F, which is bonkers. So to test the pulling power, I've set up just 6 coaches, so not a massive train, but something roughly prototypical. Bit of a mixture there. And let's back up and see if those NEM tension locks are at the right height. Here we go. Okay, nice and easy, and let's make the most of this Loco's amazing ability to crawl. To do this nice and steadily. I mean, look at that. So this is something that I think we've lost on a lot of new models. We've had some tank engines recently that restored my faith in the manufacturers, but a lot of larger Locos like this these days have not been such good crawlers. So I hope that's something that we can see improve as well. The Royal Scot with 6 coaches, let's get her off and running round the layout. Bit of a jerk there as it changed direction and sort of, what do you call it, picked up the slack in the coupling rods. It's a bit of a jerk there. I'm not keen on the slop, but it certainly doesn't seem to affect the performance much, which is good. Right, so on the middle line, I've got a Bachmann LMS 460. I think this is a Jubilee, but I always get the Patriots and the Jubilees and the Scots mixed up, so please let me know if I'm wrong. It's number 45575, name Madras. And yeah, this Loco is very different from Hornby's Royal Scot. It's not quite as detailed, I don't think. It doesn't quite have the finesse. The performance definitely isn't quite as good, but I would say this is a better quality model than the Hornby Royal Scot, just because it's got the die-cast running plate, and just, I think when you look at it as well, yeah, visually it looks better, but also when you hold the model, it just feels more premium. So yeah, something a bit more like this, I think I would prefer to see, but yeah, other than that, I still think Hornby's is probably better. Anyway, it's certainly not a bad performer by any means. And then on the inside line, I have Hornby's Black 5, not the new Hornby Black 5, but the old one. And unfortunately, the new Hornby Black 5 I've got still needs work. That Loco to tender drawbar connection still doesn't work. It's gone bad, can't get the thing to run at all now, so I'm gonna have to do something about that before I can run it. The old model though, perfectly reliable still, which is not a great look, is it? Although I hear on newer models the Loco to tender connection is better on the Black 5. Doesn't help me though. Here we go. So it's a reasonably long train, 6 coaches, it's not to be sniffed at. And look at that. So despite the fast gearing, the torque does seem to be good, which again wasn't really my conclusion with the previous review I did of this. I don't think it slowed down on the curves, if memory serves. I mean, this is a long time ago, we're talking 5 years. I don't think it did that. But yeah, the torque at the slow speed definitely wasn't great before. Or maybe that's just because some modern Locos just aren't as good as this anymore, and maybe my standards have come down a little bit on performance. I don't know, but looking at this, I can't see a way to give this less than 5 on performance. It is fantastic, and it just looks great on the track as well. The Royal Scots were not prone to struggle with trains. They were not prone to sort of crawling along because they were underpowered. These locomotives were the epitome of power. They really didn't care in real life, and the fact that this model doesn't care about loads and doesn't struggle too makes it, in a way, very realistic. So I'm pleased with this. Yeah, I think this is great, and if Hornby could bring this back, maybe with some upgrades, I think it'd get a good review from me. Let's have some ratings then on Hornby's Royal Scot. And as I've been saying, the design may date back to 2007, 18 years ago, but looking at the model, you would not know it, would you? So level of detail, I've given 4.5 star. I think in the past I gave it 5. It's not quite a 5 now. I think newer models do have more detail than this, but on the grand scheme of things, it is still amazing. So we've got a great paint job on this. We really have. The lining looks great. All of the little printed parts, all fantastic, and do you know what, even the finish isn't bad either. It could be a little better, perhaps if it was a bit more satin it would look a little bit less plasticky, perhaps if it did have a matte effect on the smoke box that would be better as well, but on the whole it's really good. We've got proper turned metal buffers and safety valves, that looks great, metal reversing rod, fully detailed cab, that looks amazing, loads of separate parts along the body. Really good. The etched nameplates aren't the best, the lettering doesn't stand out on those, leaving them looking a little bit flat. We don't have details such as cab lighting, that's the sort of thing you'd expect on newer models, nor do we have working lamps or anything like that, so it's not the most detailed Loco in the world in terms of maybe flashy features, but in terms of just the way it looks, I don't think I'd fault it. It is amazing. So, performance I have given 5-star. Before I found that this was a bit inconsistent at the slow speeds, possibly because it was geared to run fast, which I would still agree with, it does run fast, but I don't know why, but after having this Loco for 5 years or so, after running it quite a lot, outside of just the usual hours running in during the review, this has become much smoother. It's not inconsistent at the crawl anymore, to the point where I don't think I could fault the performance. 5-star, loads of torque, loads of power, amazing at all speeds, if a little bit fast, yes, but now I'm not seeing any disadvantage to that. The pulling power then, 0.46 newtons or 28 coaches on straight and level track. Well, that's an awful lot. That's the same as Hornby's new 9F. Really can't say fairer than that. So good and powerful as well, despite the plastic body, so the weight isn't a massive issue. The mechanism though is one of the weaker areas of the model. For me this is a 3-star. Now it's got some good things, it's got loads of pickups, 6 per rail, that's really good. Obviously the motor's high quality, lots of power, great performance out of that. It's got the bearings on the driving axles, so it's got the basics really, but serviceability is very poor. To get the base keeper off to service the pickups or the axles, that's a nightmare. Also, to remove the body, there's a potential for damage there because the instructions didn't include the fact that you have to remove the speedometer. On more recent Hornby designs, the speedometer has been cleverly incorporated into the Loco chassis so that it isn't necessary to remove it. With this Loco it is, and so that's a bit of an issue, I would say. Also, no flywheel fitted to the motor, not a massive deal, but worth mentioning. So, a few things detracting from the mechanism here. Similarly, the quality I think could have been better. The Loco is quite plasticky in its construction, at least outwardly, so plastic boiler, plastic running plate, all that stuff. There is quite a lot of visible glue on this model, unfortunately, as well, in more than just 1 or 2 places, so it's not just me nitpicking, there really is quite a lot of visible glue across it. Quite a few wonky details as well. We've got pipework, which is a bit cockeyed and not quite looking realistic. We've got the whistle, we've got a lamp bracket bent to one side. Yeah, I think we've seen a better build. It's a very complex Loco, so I can understand that it's tricky to assemble, but we have seen Hornby do better. So 3-star on quality, not terrible, but we've seen better. Value for money then, I've given a slightly better score than I did before. Obviously, time's gone on now, it's 5 years since I last reviewed this, and standards have gone up since then generally. But also prices have gone up since then, so the value for money looks a little bit better now as well. So I've given 3.5 star to the value. The RRP was £170.99, which I think is okay. Would have been even better if the model was better, but yeah, not bad. And at the retailers it was about £144 at the time. Obviously to be a bit more now, but looking at the prices I've got, I'd give it 3.5 star. To get higher than that on value, it would have needed more metal on board, a higher quality build, of course, and better serviceability. If all of this had been better, I would probably have called this a bargain at £140 to £170. Overall then, that is 7.97 out of 10, which is pretty close to 8. That's not a bad score for a Loco designed in 2007. And into the logbook this goes, where it is 17th place above the Rapido Tipfield Train Pack and below the Hornby Princess Royal. So this is not a model that we can ignore because it's nearly 20 years old. It still holds its own really, really well against other locomotives, and with a few tweaks and with a few upgrades, this could totally fit into Hornby's modern range. And one day, I hope we will see exactly that. So there you have it then, folks. That was my review of Hornby's Royal Scot locomotive. And can we consider this locomotive as being from Hornby's golden age? Yes, we absolutely can. I mean, the standard of this locomotive for 2007 is very, very high. And I think with some manufacturers, models are getting better and better these days. That's certainly true. And with Hornby, in many ways, their newest models have been getting better and better too, but not necessarily in terms of detail. Yes, in build quality, they've gotten a lot better over recent years. Obviously, in terms of the features on offer, Hornby have made massive leaps. But in terms of raw detail and the way models look, not much has changed over the last 20 years, and many would argue things went backwards for quite a few years. They're starting to improve again now, but yeah, it's not been a gradual climb since 2007, has it? So fascinating, really fascinating, and I love this Royal Scot model. It is better than I remember, and you can put this next to a 2025 model and it will still look fantastic next to it, which isn't an insult to 2025 models. It is a compliment to the Hornby of 2007 and Sandokan, who made these amazing models. So thank you very much for watching, folks. Let me know what you think about this situation. What are some of the other Golden Age Hornby locomotives you can think of? What would be your, I don't know, top 5 list, if you can think of a top 5? Let me know, and if one comes up a lot in the comments that I've not recently covered, maybe it's time I did. So yeah, keep those suggestions coming. For now though, thank you very, very much for watching, and I'll see you very, very soon with another video. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.